Hey all, it is Tuesday, and yes, you will see by the title of the video, we are going to talk about the woman card today. And I didn't mention this aspect of the issue in my Monday video on the ArenaNet Guild Wars 2 thing, because I try to avoid it like the plague. This is something that I've had to learn the hard way in work. And that's what I want to talk about today. Normally, this would be something I'd just deal with on Feedback Friday because I did get quite a few comments about it. But I think in this case, it deserves its own video, in part because this is one of these videos that I suspect people will get pretty mad at me for my views on this. This is, ironically, people are going to take away my woman card for talking about the woman card. And this is something I've had, like I said, to learn the hard way over years of making this mistake and having to learn from it. And so I thought I'd impart wisdom. That's always a great idea on the internet, where 22-year-olds tell 14-year-olds how to live their lives. That was a joke. Don't freak out. But the question that brought up with the whole Guild Wars 2 drama was whether it was okay for this female narrative designer to play the woman card, as people say, make it about her gender, or more accurately, say that the person was only making the comments they did, disagreeing with her slightly, because of her gender. And my rule of thumb that I had to learn from doing it wrong for many, many years is when it comes to anything professional, you absolutely cannot play the woman card just on your suspicions. If you don't have evidence, don't play the woman card. Think of the woman card as a greeting card, something you exchange between friends. So if you are out and you've had a bad week and you're at the bar and you're talking to your buds and you just want to vent, then it's okay to say, he's doing this to me because I'm a woman. Because this was the whole point of safe spaces and consciousness raising exercises during the second wave, places where people could go and vent that frustration. Because here's the problem with doing it at work. Those of you who are still with me and aren't mad at me and hitting the dislike button and already on Reddit and already on Tumblr going, oh my God, because that's what it sounds like to me at this point. There is a reason for this. And it has nothing to do with misogynies, nothing to do with anything internalized. I just drank an iced tea. That's the only thing I've internalized right now. Internalized iced tea. But here's why. If you are in a workplace environment where you are being singled out for your gender, that is precisely the worst place in the world to say you are being singled out for your gender. So, for example, if you believe that Twitter is a cesspool of misogyny, which social justice warriors, or as I call them, outrage warriors, do, if you truly believe that, that is the worst place in the world to state that view. You are going to lose. Why? Because if you're wrong, you've just falsely accused someone. And that will be fairly easily found out just by asking them why. If they have a really good explanation for it, whoops, you look like an unprofessional idiot. Harsh words, but it's true. Nobody wants an employee with a chip on their shoulder. If you are right, and you are being singled out for your gender, that person won't have as good a reason, but they will deny up and down that they did it because of your gender. And if you are in a place where you actually believe that systemic sexism is alive and well, the systemic sexists making the decisions at the company will rule against you. So don't do it. The entire purpose of understanding concepts like, for better or for worse, patriarchy, understanding sexism and systemic sexism and systemic discrimination is to help you navigate it better. This was the thing I did not learn in women's studies courses. This is what I had to learn on the job. You do not take your understanding of feminism and throw it in someone's face, because the whole premise behind it is that women are uniquely disadvantaged. So because of that, you're not in a powerful enough position to throw your contentious opinion in someone else's face. You are doing it wrong. What you have to do is accept, I am in a situation, if you truly believe this. Now, I want to be clear. In my opinion, I think this commenter, this Twitch streamer, YouTuber, something like that. Anyway, this Guild Wars 2 public player would have had the exact same conversation with a man. I have had similar conversations with people who watch my content. You guys have had the conversations with, can vouch for it. I don't think it has anything to do with my gender. It has to do with a shared love of gaming and somebody wanting to start a conversation. But there have been situations where I was pretty damn sure I was being judged differently because I was a woman. Primarily, it comes up when people think I'm not being nice enough. And I see guys all around me acting like flaming assholes, and they're seen as tough. And I do the same thing, and I'm seen as mean or worse, bitchy. But do I go and say, you're only doing this because I'm a woman? No, because that's going to get me labeled bitchy-er. What do? Well, you have to decide whether you're going to just understand that you are working in a place that has inequalities or profoundly gendered expectations of its staff. That's better. That's a better thing to say. If you work for a company where they expect women to behave in a profoundly different way than men, and they are out there, I'm not going to deny it. But if you are there, you can either choose, well, this is a stepping stone on my career. So like any other expectation that comes with the job, I am just going to be more aware. And sometimes that's a valid choice. Other times, you can go to HR, but stuff like this, be warned, HR is as much there to cover the company's ass as to help employees. So go to HR with caution. You may have to start looking around for another job. And don't tell them you left your previous company because of sexism. But do what a lot of career women do. Look for a company that already has multiple women in leadership roles. Not just one, because, oh God, learn from my mistakes. If you've got one woman and only one woman in a management position, a wing of the company, that's very likely a token hire, and she's going to be your worst freaking enemy. And yes, I said token hire. We're not supposed to talk about those, but they happen. But you are going to have to learn and understand and learn to navigate the gendered assumptions that people make about people. And I have had to learn this because I am profoundly gender atypical. This is the reason I lose my absolute shit when people get on me about gendered preferences and science and all that stuff. The more you pound that gavel, the more you talk about the Nordic paradox, which is the finding that the most approaching gender parity, there is no such thing as a perfectly gender parity country in the world, but the most wage parity countries in the world have profoundly gendered social roles. So women end up in more female traditional jobs and men end up in more male traditional jobs. And so that's called the Nordic paradox, because one would think that in a truly equal society, you wouldn't see that. You'd see more individualized job preference. And the truth is that just because there's more pay equity between jobs. So teachers get paid better in those countries, because they're very socialized. Doesn't mean gendered expectations are any less rigid. It is a completely different issue. And I have had to, and I hate it, I have had to smile more at times. I have had to learn that I can't emulate my male colleagues. It will not go well for me. And that's something you have to be kind of aware of when you're mentoring or counseling a woman at work as well. Those techniques may not necessarily work as well for someone female as you, just because it'll work, and then you'll get one of those people with these very gendered expectations of how men and women are supposed to act, and it will blow up in spectacular fashion. And then we get into things like coded language, and I don't believe in microaggressions. I don't think there's anything micro about bigotry. And then there are some things that just ain't aggression. But, you get into this, people start saying a lot of things that they're not saying. They talk around it. And that is toxic for the work environment. So if you feel, and this is true for anybody, and that's what's nice about this approach, is even if you're a white guy, this will work for you. If you have an issue with something professional, and for game developers and people like me, social media is an offshoot of your professional life. Even when it's a personal account, there's no getting around that. There's a reason I don't really have personal accounts. I don't have a professional account and a personal account. My entire social media is treated like a professional thing, except for Facebook, which is a horrendously failed experiment in separating personal and private life. And my experiences on Facebook are why I believe this, because I got somebody mad at me for unprofessional conduct on my personal Facebook page. And no matter how much I tried to point out, this is my first personal Facebook page. I have a fan page. If you want to be a fan, go be there. I friended you here because friend status, you get my more personal thoughts. Oh, I learned my lesson on that one. So all you can do if you feel like you are being singled out unfairly is make your case and argue the facts, argue the elements, and argue the fact that this is not a fair place to put a person in as an individual, not as a woman, not as a man, not as a member of a certain race. There are the same rules for everyone, and this is not cool. And so in this Guild Wars thing, all someone had to say is, look, I was just expressing my personal opinion. I had no intention of making this a debate. Most people will understand that and go, all right, just making conversation. And then there's no blow up. And that can be really hard to do sometimes when you're like, there have been times in the deep dark past that I felt singled out, not because I'm a woman, but because, in certain quarters I've been a games journalist or this or that. And I felt like people could assume a whole bunch of things about me because I was a games journalist. And so I was called corrupt and a shill and all that stuff. And I got really mad about it. And it didn't really do me any good. It just gave people more ability to make fun of me and hold grudges and call me unprofessional and all that stuff. And this is where we get into the difficult thing of everybody has feelings, and we live in this stupid place in the world that being professional means you have to act like a robot and not have emotions. And that's terrible, 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 terrible business. Because especially if you're a manager, if you are managing people, their feelings matter possibly more than anything else, because people feel faster than they think. And if people aren't coming to work happy, it doesn't matter how talented they are, you're not getting their best work. Feelings matter intently at work, but that's a topic for another time. Social media is easy when you're emotional. You can choose not to respond. And this takes practice. This takes practice, especially for someone like me who has a thing about ignoring people and treating people like they're beneath me. I really don't want to do that. I think one person's opinion is as valid as somebody else's opinion, unless it's like a medical opinion and you're not a doctor. It's Twitter. People have the right to express their views on Twitter. I can choose to mute them. Like, that's the paradigm for Twitter. That's the Twitter guidelines. But it's sometimes really hard when you feel like your humanity has been undermined, or you feel like somebody has not considered your humanity when they say something. You have this urge to fight back. I mean, that's what we're taught to do, right? Fight, resist, fight back. Like, this is the myth we're given. And the reality is to think of it more like martial arts. Martial arts, especially things like judo, is all about turning your opponent's energy against them. And if you really think someone doesn't care about your humanity, they're not worth talking to. You're not going to convince them. So you're either arguing for an audience, you're trying to convince a third party, not the person you're talking to, or you shouldn't argue at all. And if you're arguing to persuade a third party, you have to be on your absolute best behavior. Meaning no insults, no personal attacks, yada, 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 yada. And that can be really hard to do when you're upset. And this is where experience and learning through the school of hard knocks comes in. And this is where the ageism in gaming becomes a problem, because there aren't enough people who have been through the wars long enough. You get people like, Corrine Yu that I talked about in Lady Bits, brilliant engineer, gets hired away to places like GM because it's a lot more money. Like, that's usually why people leave. Job security and money. It's, you hit a certain age, that job security is really important. That extra money is really important. You can't eat love. Don't make that dirty. But the fact that we have such a young industry means we don't have that wisdom. We don't have the people there who can say, especially for women where there are very few mentors, we can't have somebody sit down and say, look, I know where you've been. I know how frustrating this is for you. I'm telling you because I want you to succeed. When you have a moment like this, come in here and vent to me. Don't do it publicly. Trust me. Like, let's work as a team here. That's what mentorship can do. And that's what's really lacking in gaming, because everybody is, we live in this age of you can't have a private conversation with somebody because it may leak, and face-to-face discussions. Well, you may not even work in the same city as your supervisor with this, hub and spoke remote business model we've got. But, as long as somebody can respect a private conversation and not leak something that was an internal company communication, then it can stop a lot of this PR things, because people have an outlet for their frustration. They have the ability to talk to somebody they know gives a damn, and so they don't have to fight with the guy. Wasn't a rando in this case. He's somebody who does have some understanding of things, but even if he wasn't, there's no point in attacking a rando on Twitter. I will share tweets as jokes or comments as jokes, unless I really think the identity of the speaker is important. You guys will notice I usually take out the account. I'll screen cap it, edit it, and put it in. It's really easy to do nowadays. You can even do it on the phone. Because I'm interested in the idea, not making the person feel bad or attacking the person. And that goes back to this idea of argue the facts. So if a comment is so hilarious in its out of touchedness, I like that word, that you want to share it for a chuckle, just take the person's name off. Just, But in this case, that wasn't it. In this case, the person was legitimately angry. And you know what? People just get to the end of their rope. I can still disagree with how this was handled without assuming ulterior motives to anybody. Now, there's some argument for ulterior motives, but more on this on Feedback Friday. This is strictly about when to play the woman card when you are among friends. And even then, you know, if you think you have to play the woman card with someone who is a friend, consider whether they're really a friend. I mean, if somebody is looking down on you, are they really a friend? It's only if you think you're comfortable enough with someone that you can say that. And then there's probably a gentler way to say it, because you've got to keep in mind, and this is something that, again, being bleached in that, you know, interdisciplinary studies soup in university, I had to learn is, instead of it being this sort of everyone's a little bit sexist, apologies to Avenue Q, people outside of those institutions see being called racist or being called sexist as something really, really bad and an unpardonable sin, and that makes them a bad person. And so people are going to react very strongly to that accusation, because essentially you just called them the devil, and not the Beelzebub devil, the not fun devil that doesn't have a party bus to hell. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you're still with me, if I haven't said something that triggered you and you got all mad and went blah, 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 I hope you enjoyed this video. I am doing a video game boot camp for journalists through the FU network. I will kick over to that page now so you can see it. This is my plug instead of the Patreon for the next little bit. You'll see 9 days left. This is flexible funding, so we will continue. We will get the money even if the goal isn't met. That's why it's higher than usual. It's nice that Indiegogo lets us do it, but you do get a significant savings. There's a $25 tier. You'll see it. Where is it? Why is it not? Oh, there it is. There's no picture. Leanna K. Video Game Boot Camp. This $25 will be a savings for what the general public is going to have to pay. So if you have any more interest and advice like this in career advice, how to navigate the gaming landscape, how to write for games, how to separate opinion from coverage, from reviews, stuff like that, $25. It's the cheapest education you'll ever get. And you only have, I'll say, a week. Don't leave it to the last minute. You only really have a week-ish to take advantage of that. So it is going to be a savings. I'm toying between $30 and $50 for the course, because it is going to be like probably 10 videos. It's a really substantial thing. So if you like this, check it out. I'm going to put a link in the box below. It will be quite a bit of real talk like you just saw. So thanks for watching. And for those of you who are mad, there's no point in being mad. I was mad and I made a lot of stupid mistakes. And so you have the benefit of my wisdom.